on there. You know, first of all, three titles. We were when we got when we got towards the latter part of writing the book, we were thinking about a title for the book. And one of the titles we thought about was Rolando's Journey, an American Tragedy, because it truly was an American tragedy. Another title we thought about was Rolando's Journey, a Promise Lost, because there was a lot of promise in this young man. I often thought, well, Alma and I often talked, and we thought, well, Rolando's going to be something real special, someone real special in this world. He had a lot of promise. From the beginning, from a little kid, he went to Montessori school, and they thought he was very bright. And he just academics uh, were his forte, you know. And then finally we settled
On two, and then you settled for one.
for an everlasting bond, the story of a father and his son, because of our relationship. I've always had a very close relationship with Rolando, even now. And he says, at times he'll tell me, Dad, I'm a lot like you. And I said, and I tell him, well, that has its pluses and its negatives. But three other incidents.
Your sons aren't Juan's?
Juanito. Now Juanito's taken after Vito. Is
Oh,
Juanito.
it's Vito.
Yeah.
Juanito. Okay.
Yeah, but when he was a little boy, he couldn't pronounce Vito, Juanito, so he started calling himself Vito, and it's been Vito ever since.
That's cute.
But Vito is the one has followed my footsteps. He'll soon be an LPC, like his dad, has a master's degree, and he has serious thoughts about returning to school, getting a PhD in forensic psychology. And he'll do it.
I have a question that just, popped into my brain right now when you said, Vito's a lot like me in terms of, I'm thinking that you're not a one-dimensional person. You're not black-white.
Mhm.
You have many successes up until now, family, including your wife and kids, your community, your education, and back to family, which connects back to your other son, Rolando, is your writing. I mean, you always did academic writing, ¿verdad?
Yeah. And my
And
dissertation was published.
Your dissertation was published. Congrats. And but this writing was on a personal level,
It was a personal level. It was designed that way.
The way I see it of your successes, and I think it's beautiful when we can see our kids and we see something of ourselves in them. And then you say, I mean, we're a little bit, ¿cómo se dice? Not arrogant, but self,
Yeah.
selfish, not selfish,
Yeah.
but narcissistic. But
Yeah.
we're parents. That's a
Yeah.
part of being parent, and you just kind of shine when you see something in your kids. When you see something in your kids from grandpa or grandma or tío, I say that to my son. Oh, you just sounded like your tío Ramon. Your tío Ramon used to laugh that way. Things like that. So, tying it back to, if you don't mind, to Rolando and the book. It's a beautiful story. In and itself, just corresponding, not just through telephone, through letters, writing each other
Yeah.
your stories. Did he send you, of course, his stories so that you could see them, and then you, like you said, you wrote a synopsis and you wrote the new chapter?
Yeah.
How did you feel at that moment when you first received the first chapter?
Well, I felt, we're getting going. We're on board. And we're going to finish this. Because, in academia, you always hear, when I was working on my doctorate, I always heard people, even professors, saying, well, I'm writing a book. I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write on this. And students also, well, I'm going to do this. But yet you never see the results. You never see the books.
Mm-hmm.
But I had determined that this book was going to come out, no matter what. And it did. And because there's a lot of very interesting things about this book. For example, three things. It's three things that really stand out in the book is back in a few years ago, as we had begun to write the book already, I was invited to make a major presentation with Susan Hawk, the district attorney from Dallas County.
That's what I thought, yes.
And she and I sat next to each other. There was a bunch of people in the room, puros hispanos.
And this was a reading or just a get-together?
No, this
panel?
was a presentation
Okay.
that we made on alternatives to incarceration, mental health issues and alternatives to incarceration. And, the people who invited me, Michael Gonzalez invited me. And he assumed I knew a lot about the subject because I had been a parole commissioner for the state of Texas several years. I'd voted thousands of cases, been in and out of prisons and whatnot. And it's been very interesting. My life has been interesting, at least to me. And so that combined with the fact that I was in private practice, that I had worked 8 years on contract with Metro Care, that I had, really been involved in, that I was licensed by the state of Texas and as a licensed professional counselor, that I had served on the board of trustees of Dallas Metro Care, and so all of this combined, they thought I was a good person to go speak. And of course, the district attorney, and we both spoke, and got along great. I liked the lady, very pretty lady, very smart lady.
Was she was not the one with the drug problem?
She was the one with the drug problem. She was the district attorney, eventually had to resign. As a matter of fact, when we made that presentation, Ms. Alonso, she was seated right next to me, and when it came down, I spoke first, and then when it came to her speaking, she told us she had just returned from rehab in Houston. She told us she had been there 30 days, and that at $1,700 a day. So can you imagine, not too many people have that kind of money.
That's like $60,000?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For a month. Wow, that's a,
Yeah.
but it's worth it.
And and I haven't kept up with her anymore. Of course, she's not in the public's eye or anything, but I was impressed with her. I was impressed with her delivery at that talk, and apparently she liked mine too. I took a lot of pictures with her and whatnot. And so that was one event. Another event that happened, the third time Rolando went to prison.
Was it a separate case or was it breaking parole? Did he break probation or was it a new case?
He picked up a drug case in Tarrant County. The third time he went to prison, Rolando had, do you remember the affluenza team? The kid in Fort Worth?
Yeah, affluence.
Killed
What about-
4 people.
Yes.
Maimed a couple of
Yes.
others and whatnot. Well, he had an attorney that got him 10 years probation. Of course, his dad had a lot of money. And then he, okay, Rolando had the same attorney and the same psychologist as the affluenza team.
Okay.
But Rolando, who never hurt anyone except himself and his family, got 10 years.
Prison.
Yeah. Okay, wait a minute. He got 7 years, 7 years of prison at that time. And so that's another paradoxical event that happened during these years. Another thing that happened is the last time that Rolando was in prison, it just so happened that he came up for parole in the same office that his dad, where his dad had voted thousands of cases as a parole commissioner. An office where when Rolando was a little kid, I used to take him to work with me periodically, and he would sit there and play with his Star Wars figures. He would stay there with my secretary. I would run to the prison, interview a few inmates, and come back and, and spend some time with him. But Rolando was always very articulate and very inquisitive. And sometimes the chairman of the state parole board, who was a very good friend of mine, Ruben Torres at the time, he was my best friend. And he would come and visit me sometime. And it just so happened that on one of those occasions, Rolando was with me, and Rolando would sit there and ask Ruben all kinds of questions and whatnot. And how ironic that in that same office, Rolando's case would then be voted upon. And I found that very interesting. Even more interesting is the fact that when Rolando was in Hondo, Texas, at the NAY unit,
How do you spell that?
N-Y, when Rolando was in Hondo, Texas, and the Torres unit is right across the street. There was a prison named after my best friend, Ruben Torres.
What was his title again?
He was chairman of the parole board of the state of Texas.
Okay. What years?
Oh, hell, it must have been...
90s?
No, it was in the 80s, all throughout the 80s.
84?
84.
I worked for the parole board.
You did?
Yeah, in Austin. I was a receptionist.
Yeah, well, Rolando...
I think I met him once.
Yeah. And Ruben was a very special friend to me. But anyway, like I said, I could talk to you all day about all this stuff. And what happened was that,
But I have questions.
okay,
Have you discussed this scenario or paradox with your son? Does he remember
he
being there as a
remembers a
little
lot of the
boy?
stuff. Yeah, he remembers
He
a lot.
remembers Mr. Torres.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.